I've reported recently that Pope Leo is holding a consistory, which is a big meeting of the Pope with the College of Cardinals in the Vatican, typically at that creepy St. Paul Center in the Vatican, St. Paul Audience Hall. You know, the big room with that. If you take pictures from a certain angle, it has a very serpent head look from inside, with this kind of quasi demonic looking statue that's supposed to be our Lord in a nuclear blast coming for the second coming or something. Who thought it was a good idea to put that there? I don't know, but the thing should be melted down and sold as scrap metal. But that's where they're holding it. It'll be in January. And it is reportedly to lay out his program for the College of Cardinals moving forward. Now, he gave us a hint of this program already the moment he stepped out onto the loggia when he told us he would be continuing the program of Pope Francis. But typically, what happens at consistories are a bunch of new cardinals are named. Bishops are elevated to the College of Cardinals. That none have been announced yet, so it's a little late now to announce a new cardinal, but I get he can do what he likes on that. We're going to go to Info Vaticana because there's some, we'll call it educated speculation going on here from insiders who think that you're going to see a shakeup in the months afterwards, key positions in the Roman Curia, and Cardinal Fernandez might be one of them. We'll see. I tend to think he'll be around until the end of his term, which will be in 2028, so another 2 years of him. But the headline from Info Vaticana: the consistory in January announces a genuine reorganization of the Vatican. Well, we'll see. Info Vaticana has been trying to be more friendly to Leo than they were to Pope Francis. But we'll see, depending on how this shakes out. But you can expect a bunch of new appointments in the coming months. We've seen a few around the edges, but the major dicasteries may start getting reorganized. New prefects. The ones you want to keep an eye on, of course, Cardinal Fernandez at the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. As well, of course, Cardinal Arthur Roach at the liturgy, and a few others, the dicastery for the clergy and consecrated life, and the rest of those. Here is the details of this piece. Just over a month before the first extraordinary consistory of Leo XIV's pontificate, several signs indicate that the meeting on January 7th and 8th will not be a mere formality, but rather the beginning of a significant change in the way the church is governed. According to Pelican Plus, and for those who might ask, I'm using the Info Vaticana article because I don't have a Pelican Plus membership. The meeting symbolizes a return to the traditional style of papal governance, after a long period in which the Vatican operated under more centralized structures and was heavily influenced by the personal figure of Pope Francis. The upcoming consistory will be the first that Leo XIV faces without the agenda he inherited from the Jubilee, meaning without Francis's explicit program outlined, allowing him to see his own priorities, as opposed to that of Pope Francis. Its very convocation already represents a contrast with the previous pontificate, during which such events were few, highly controlled, and of limited scope. Now, cardinals and observers hope that January will usher in a more collegial dynamic, less dependent on the Pope's immediate circle. So one of the things that this is referring to here is that Pope Francis was criticized by the cardinals very early on, because he was barely holding these things. He almost never held consistories. And when he did, it was to get the cardinals together in highly scripted surroundings so they could have one-on-one time with his personal curial handlers. Typically, the main event was making new cardinals. None have been named so far. Again, it's getting a little late. We're a month from when this is going to happen. That is to be expected. So it will be interesting to see what they do. This is going to be a closed-door meeting. I doubt the press will be invited. We'll hear about it, though, after the fact. And this is a general good sign because the nature of how the Vatican should be running should be a little more, shall we say, inclusive of the input of the cardinals, who are supposed to be essentially helping the Pope run the church at a much higher level than even the local bishops. Back to the piece. In recent weeks, the Pope has undertaken adjustments to the structure of the Roman Curia, reversing several measures implemented by his predecessor. Among the most significant changes is the restoration of certain powers to the Secretariat of State, which had been weakened in recent years and relegated in favor of a more personalistic and variable model of governance. Now, one thing worth noting, the Secretary of State has been, they say, weakened in recent years. But it was under that weakening that we got the deal with China. Imagine a more Cardinal Parolin with more power. Cardinal Pietro Parolin is one that people are watching. Will he be replaced by Leo? Or will he be renewed? We shall see. The Pope has already signaled that he's going to keep the deal with China going forward. Leo XIV emphasized that each dicastery must be fully responsible for matters within its purview, reaffirming the traditional autonomy of curial offices. This approach aims to correct the recent trend toward the dispersal of responsibilities and the irregular concentration of decision-making power in the figure of the Pope. Another key aspect is the new requirement that matters submitted directly by the faithful to the Holy See be reviewed not only by the relevant dicastery, but also by the corresponding ecclesiastical ordinary. This change strengthens the role of the Curia in ministering to the laity, and at the same time prevents certain issues from being lost in intermediary bureaucracies. In other words, if you write a letter complaining about something in your diocese to the Vatican, not only will the relevant dicastery have to review it, but so will your bishop. It's a double-edged sword, actually. Imagine, if you will, you have a bishop like, I don't know, one of the ones who are banning Latin masses and saying we're not going to ask for extensions. And you find out they're going off the deep end with things. Well, now he's going to be informed of your letter. See how this kind of cracks the door open a little bit for retaliation? It is a double-edged sword. But what most people are interested in are the personnel changes. And of course, what's going to happen with Fernandez. Now, I would like to be wrong with my prediction, but my prediction is that Cardinal Fernandez will be at the very least allowed to run out his term of service, which will be ending in 2028, if not renewed at that point, for another 5 years. Like I said, I'd like to be wrong. I don't think I'm going to be, but if I am wrong, I'll be the first to come on here and be like, well, we got a new prefect for the dicastery of the destruction of the faith. Hopefully it'll be the doctrine of the faith instead under whoever it is. We'll see. In addition to the structural changes, the Pope has begun a reshuffling of positions. In his papal household, he has appointed an Augustinian friar as vice-regent of the prefecture and elevated his secretary to the rank of Monsignor. In the curial sphere, on November 27th, he appointed Bishop Marco Molino as an adjunct secretary for the dicastery of legislative text, a more peripheral than upwardly mobile post. Molino, who had been secretary of the Commission for the Reform of the General Regulations of the Curia and secretary of the well-known Council of Cardinals created by Pope Francis, thus leaves one of the most influential bodies of the previous pontificate. The move is interpreted as a clear sign that Leo XIV is prudently assessing the legacy of the council and recalibrating its weight within the new government. The Council of Cardinals was a creation of Francis. It could just be abolished. The fact that Francis never incorporated Cardinal Robert Prevost, despite his rapid rise into the Council of Cardinals, now adds to the replacement of Molino, configuring a perceptible shift with respect to the governance model of the Argentine pontiff. Well, also, it's interesting to note that he was not on that Council of Cardinals, despite it being reported that Francis had him as his preference for succeeding him after the fact. But that could be also propaganda coming from the likes of James Martin. We shall see. A decisive element of the Leonine Vatican will be the definitive appointment of the prefects of the dicasteries. For now, those appointed by Francis remain in their posts provisionally until the Pope makes substantive decisions. Among the most closely watched is, of course, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, prefect for the dicastery of the doctrine of the faith, whose tenure has been marked by controversy and criticism, especially after the recent encyclical Mater Populi Fidelis, which sparked an unnecessary debate within the church. And people are wondering what's going to happen to him, despite him saying that they are working on 2 documents that inherited from the previous pontificate. Now, of course, it has to be said, the Pope could have just gotten rid of those documents. He has no obligation to continue the work of his predecessor that's unfinished. But he said, day one, that he's continuing his work. So those documents are forthcoming. We don't know exactly what they are, but they promise to raise eyebrows because they always do. Again, my prediction is Fernandez will be renewed. Again, we shall see. We shall see. If you want to do a novena or something, I would almost suggest, since the consistory is January 7th, I would suggest starting your novena on December 30th, the 31st, a novena for the consistory to lead to the replacement of Cardinal Fernandez and other men like him out of the Roman Curia, and that men who have some shred of the Catholic faith be given those posts. It would be a better, it would just be better in general. And the article goes on to talk about how you're going to have Leo's style be the dominant one, with a selection of cardinals. Less noise, less chaos, low key. We'll see. It hasn't been exactly like that since then, other than that Pope Leo has a much better personality than Francis. And a lot of the opposition to Francis, it turns out, was based on his personality. And we know that, judging from the number of people who see all the heterodox things coming from Rome, coming from Leo's office, coming from him, the weird stuff he says, but he says it in a congenial, charitable way. And so people are willing to cut him more slack. It's amazing how much personality, how much slack you can be given despite a bad personality, or rather a good personality, and how little slack you'll be given if you've got a nasty personality like Francis has. Now we're going to shift here. So pray on this consistory, pray for it, that it goes well, that some good choices are made. And we'll shift here because it's Advent. And in the secular world, it's Christmas, basically. So we're moving towards the Feast of the Nativity of our Lord, Christmas. And of course, everywhere, Christmas decorations are going up, and it's fine to start putting decorations up before Christmas. After all, you would, if you had an honored guest coming to your home, you'd probably start making preparations, in the days before his arrival. And so you see parishes starting to get decorated and things. Exhibitions going up too. Well, let's go to tfp.org, Tradition Family Property. This demands reparation. Headline: American and Austrian Tradition Family Property join forces to protest blasphemous exhibit at the Künstler House. That is a man dressed as a Blessed Virgin Mary. And it gets way worse than that. This demands reparation. The time we're recording this, although this will be shown again as a separate clip later in the coming days, but at the initial time we're recording this, we're going to be doing we're just a couple of days away from First Friday and First Saturday. First Saturday was asked for by Our Lady of Fatima to Sister Lucia in the 1920s after the Fatima apparitions, that every Catholic would go and keep a devotion where for the first Saturday of 5 consecutive months, they would go to confession, they would go to Mass, and they would do acts of reparation and meditate on the 15 mysteries of the Holy Rosary. 5 consecutive months, the first Saturday. For offenses, to do reparation for offenses done against Our Lady. That's what was asked. If you need some fuel for this, the story's for you. The American Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family, and Property has joined the Austrian TFP's ongoing campaign against a blasphemous exhibit at the Künstler Haus German, strengthening the growing international response to the outrage. The exhibition's title, "You Shall Make for Yourself an Image," inverts the words contained in the Second Commandment. Some of the offensive artwork includes a mock crucifix featuring a frog instead of a corpus, a photograph of a bearded man dressed in clothing resembling that of Our Lady, posing with an infant. This image was created by a James Martin-type activist, Sumi Anjuman. A modern rendition of the Pieta statue depicting Our Lady completely without clothing. An image of a female baby Jesus. A work by Esther Straub, a self-proclaimed witch, portrays a liturgical vestment stained with blood, urine, and feces. The same artist's blasphemous depiction of Our Lady made international news in 2024. The exhibition will feature works from 42 artists. According to its organizers, the collection aims to promote feminist perspectives. Quoting the propaganda for this so-called art exhibit. The exhibition, "You Shall Make for Yourself an Image," explores the imaginative power of religious experience, its visual expression in Christian iconography, and its interpretation by contemporary artists. At its heart are works whose creators approach Christian iconography with critical yet affectionate, humorous yet feminist perspectives, offering new insights into imagery passed down through the centuries. End quote. It's worth noting that this is an inversion of the great command to not make idols. You shall make for yourself an image. You shall make for yourself an idol. That's what they're saying. They're admitting that what they're doing. As part of its campaign, the Austrian TFP has launched an online petition urging Tanja Prusnik, president of the Artists House Association, to close the exhibition immediately. Its sister organization, the American TFP, has initiated a parallel petition drive in the United States, inviting Americans to join the effort. Signatures from both petitions will be combined and delivered in Vienna. John Horvat, vice president of the American TFP, emphasized the importance of international support. Many times the tendency is to think that we should not worry too much about what happens overseas. However, blasphemy has no borders. As Catholics, we have the moral obligation to make public reparation for attacks on God's honor, especially one of this gravity. Bishop Herman Glettler of Innsbruck publicly expressed approval of the exhibit, and this should not surprise anybody who's been following my channel for a while, because every year during Lent, I report to you that Bishop Herman Glettler uses his cathedral to put up blasphemous art. This mock crucifix featuring a frog instead of a corpus, he had that exact piece of art in his cathedral a few years ago. I reported on it when it happened. He publicly expressed approval of the exhibit. He says, quote, definitely worth seeing. The show of conflict-riddled pictorial experiments in context of Christian iconography does not get lost in scandalous stories, yet it shows the exciting range from Martin Kippenberger's crucified frog to Marcus Wilfling's cube cross, as well as Deborah Sengel's hypocritical worshiper and Thomas Ries's resurrection painting. The exhibition is evidence of the endless struggle to do justice to the mystery of God, who has inscribed himself into a wounded world. And Catholics disagree. Obviously. What the bishop there is doing is helping them to commit blasphemy and sacrilege. That's what they're doing. Reparation is needed. If you have been thinking about starting the 5 First Saturdays, I don't usually tell people to start them, right in time for winter. But since most of you watching this are in the Northern Hemisphere, an hour before I went live on this, they started having snowfall in Oklahoma City and black ice warnings on the highways, making my plans for the day different than they were originally. But this demands reparation. So if you have the ability to start the 5 First Saturdays devotion, Our Lady of Fatima just asked that everybody do it once. Keep it once. Complete the 5 First Saturdays devotion one time. You can start December 6th. Thought I'd bring that to your attention. Unfortunately, such things are not limited to what's going on in Austria. I'm going to show you something here a little closer to home for most people watching that also demands reparation. I personally detest when Catholic imagery is used for politics. And I don't just mean those tacky, progressives like to make saint candles or pictures of their favorite politicians with halos. That's bad enough. That's bad enough. And yes, I would be really annoyed and find it equally upsetting if conservatives did the same thing. But conservatives, as Christians generally, don't really go in for that kind of thing. So thanks be to God on that. We go to Boston 25 News, a local news station out of Boston in the United States. The headline, ICE was here. Dedham Church sparks outrage over nativity scene with political message. They put a sign that said ICE was here in the creche to suggest that immigration enforcement took the baby Jesus. Utterly detestable. But why should we be surprised by this? A Dedham church is causing controversy over another political statement in their nativity scene this holiday season. A sign reading ICE was here sits in the middle of the nativity scene outside their front doors. Underneath the sign reads, the Holy Family is safe in our church. If you see ICE, please call, and then it gives you a phone number to call. Over the past decade, Father Stephen Jasoma has used the nativity scene to hold a mirror to the world for self-reflection, he told Boston 25 Monday. In years past, he and his parish Peace and Justice group have decided to make statements surrounding large-scale endings of life in the U.S., the thermometer problem, and immigration issues across the country. In 2018, he displayed Jesus in a cage, another statement on immigration. We thought this was a good way to show the dynamic of what's happening in the world today, said the priest. This is a stance I'd hope all churches would take. We should be a welcoming community. Meanwhile, local Catholics and community leaders like C.J. Doyle, the executive director of the state's Catholic Action League of Massachusetts, spoke against Father Gisoma's decision. We have a case of a dissident priest who has a long history of these crackpot publicity stunts, said Doyle outside the nativity scene Monday. He's politicizing Christmas. He's exploiting the Holy Family. He's using his position as the pastor of a Catholic parish to promote his left-wing political ideology. He called on local Catholics to reach out to the archdiocese, which he claimed has allowed these political stunts. He asked, is this not obstruction of justice they're really pushing here? If he doesn't really believe in the Catholic religion or thinks the Catholic Church is a vehicle for political activism, perhaps he should find new employment. End quote. I'll have links to these articles today at the Anthony Stine Substack. Link in the description box below for the post. You will find that the TFP post there as well, which will have a link in the article itself to that petition. You're being invited to sign it. Feel free to. Why are people politicizing Christmas? They always do. That's why. Always. Every year. And it's going to get worse. Don't be shocked by this. Don't be shocked that the priest has the blessing of his bishop. You know, we talk about shakeups coming in the Vatican, new cardinals leading dicasteries. You know what else we need a shakeup in? In the American episcopate. But the problem is the Pope gave the blessing to the new direction the USCCB has taken. That's why you're not going to see anything happen to that priest. Reparation is needed. Acts of reparation, of penance, to make amends for what was done there are needed. Sorely, sorely needed. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. If you like and subscribe if you haven't, it does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. And share that TFP article on social media if you can, on your Facebook or wherever it is, to get that petition going. Not a big fan of petitions. I don't usually think they'll do much to help. We got to do something. And you have an opportunity to do something. This is the best thing to do after prayer and penance. Prayer and penance must always come first when we resist these things. Chesterton just says, nobody puts baby in the corner. Nobody puts Jesus in a cage. Yeah. Anyway, and also pray for everybody we spoke about today. Not, again, as I always say, I'm not trying to make you angry at these bishops and priests. Pray for them. They need your prayers. So always pray for the church. Well, here's a super chat. Last second. Thank you, Catholic Arrows. Father Carney of the League of St. Martin has launched the first chaplet of the Holy Face Crusade for the spread of the TLM. Join him. Time to rise. God bless you, Dr. Stine. Well, thank you for the super chat. Email me a link to any relevant information, and I'll try to share it tomorrow or this weekend. So always pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.